It takes two. I thought one was enough. It's not true. It takes two of you. Just the two of us. It takes two.
Hello from the Village Conservatory podcast network. Do you like that, Daphne? Welcome to It Takes Two, a project where we've paired an emerging and an established artist together to explore their respective creative processes. I'm Jillian Willems, your host for today's episode, and joining me, we have Ari Weinberg and Noah Boonov. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
I love being here. This is awesome.
So I'll start by asking you both. I guess this is more for Noah because you are the mentee in this scenario. What led you to apply for this project?
Yeah, I guess I was looking for a mentor. I'm really lucky that, I have lots of connections to people in the city here. And I feel I'm comfortable around a lot of them. But I was looking for someone to kind of instill a drive into me. I think that sometimes I'm a pretty laid back individual where I just hope things will kind of come to me. And this year I was okay, you know what? I think it's time to search out someone who has been in your shoes, who has kind of seen where you are. And I just was really looking to connect with someone who really understood my point of view, really.
Amazing. And Ari, my friend, what was it like finding out that someone wanted you to mentor them or guide them in this way?
I was a little bit oh, what, me? I'm so flattered. What? Okay, bring it on. I was deeply flattered. And I sort of knew Noah a little bit, so it was also just great to see her name. I know all the fine folks at Village Conservatory, and I really applaud the fine work that you do. And so just sort of a bag of awesome sauce.
Amazing. Thank you. So can I ask you both? I'll start with you, Noah. What did you have in mind as far as a final project or a goal for this mentorship?
Yeah, I've been exploring a lot of devised theater, and I really wanted to create something where I got to explore both my Jewish and queer identity and kind of explore where are the intersections for that. In Winnipeg, I've had a really great experience with the queer community here and making a lot of connections, but because I didn't grow up in Winnipeg, I didn't have very many Jewish connections here in the city, and I found it kind of hard to find my place as a Jewish queer person here. Because I, as much as I think that everyone is so open and loving here in Winnipeg, it's hard to kind of insert yourself when especially when you're a young person and you don't really know what religion means to you and what your cultural ties to here. My grandmother was here, and when she was alive, I had that kind of connection to her. But now that she's gone, I just didn't really feel any sort of connection to my heritage here. But in Ottawa, I had a really deep connection and close connection with the Jewish community there, and I hadn't really explored my queer identity there the same way. So I wanted to try and kind of marry those two together and find something for myself to kind of hold on to instead of trying to, go out and search from the community, to try and build it for myself, and then, feel comfortable to kind of go out and search after that once I kind of figured out what it meant for me.
Lovely. And so, Ari, once you got over your initial shock and excitement and all the flattery, what did you have in mind as far as a goal to help Noah with through this project?
Oh, interesting. I didn't have a goal really until we spoke, because I just needed to get to know Noah a bit more as a person, and to see what made her tick as an artist and what her curiosities were, and a little bit more about why she even asked for me in the first place. And I guess it's only now that I'm sort of realizing that I'm old and now I'm your grandmother, Noah. That's what's happened. I'm your queer
Best
Jewish
grandma out there.
Grandma's bones.
Exactly.
Welcome
My
back.
bubby Ari.
So So did you work on a project together, or was it something else that you were after?
I was really looking to kind of work on a project. I felt like I hadn't really explored my vulnerability or who I truly was in my work. I feel like I've always kind of danced around it a little bit, but I think I was in a good place with with my self-discovery, that I was ready to kind of explore that vulnerability within my theater work. And I was looking to kind of like share my experience because I think that, you don't get to hear a lot about a young, queer Jewish person the same way. Like, it was weighing on me a lot that I hadn't really had a chance to explore my Jewish identity in my art. And then this summer I worked with One Trunk Theater, where I got to do their artist in residency program. And I really got to explore like queer identity and queer family and what that meant for me, and like really put that into my work. And it felt so like liberating, exposing a little bit of yourself in performance. I think that it's really exciting, and it's something that I felt like I hadn't really pushed myself there quite yet, and I think it kind of hindered my artistic experience and my artistic process.
Ari, can you talk a little bit about your artistic experiences over the years and how that might relate to the project that brought you and Noah together?
Sure. So back in 1902, when they invented the wheel, and I was already 87 then. I've done it all. I've been an actor. I've been a director. I've done dramaturgy. I've taken playwriting classes, though I haven't written a play yet. And I've done acting in all kinds of, I've done new works, I've done musicals, I've done plays, and I'm a bit of an open book, I guess, because I'm a Gemini. And so, but a lot of my work has also been in cabaret. And so telling personal stories has always just sort of been a part of my artistic practice in a way, and figuring out how to sort of use my stories to express other people's pieces of art through song, through other pieces of text, has just sort of always been a part of who I am and how I have walked through the world as an artist. So Noah, in our first conversation, sort of said that part of her goal was to sort of do a vocal mask type piece. And so then it immediately gave me a really great window into where to go. And so a lot of the work for us happened organically through just having conversations, through both of us sharing experiences, and then through me sort of poking and prodding Noah to go certain places around certain themes that I had heard her talk about in some of our first conversations. And then I started to be like, go and write about this. Here's a prompt, go write about it. Tell me how you feel about that. Go find a poem about this. Like, if I say to you, what's a song that might exemplify this, what would it be? And so there was lots of sharing personal stories, and then me sort of also asking her to do a bunch of writing and to find some text. And so I at least had a fun time. It was a fun adventure for me. It could have been absolute torture for Noah.
It was not.
We are about to find out. Noah, what was that like? So for me, hearing the structure with which you were working, or under which you were working, that's super useful to conceptualize how that could have been really inspiring. Can you tell me a little bit about what those prompts did for you?
Yeah, it was really nice to have something that kind of grounded us together. We'd have a lot of conversations about, Ari asked me a bunch of questions, and it gave me like something really to think about, because I knew that I wanted to explore it and like my identities, but I didn't know exactly like what were the right questions to ask.
Right.
like, and how can I phrase them a certain way? So having Ari like being able to ask me these questions and then go out and into the world and like sit with them and think about them, and then like coming back to them and saying, okay, like, yeah, I hadn't really thought about it that way. And then, you know, like we talked about ritual and what something like that might be like, and what are like the queer and like the queer rituals and the Jewish rituals that we have. And it brought me a lot of research. Like I really love incorporating research into my artistic practice. I like to read and to kind of like outsource a lot of inspiration. So like being able to have those questions where I can be like, okay, now that I have this thought, here it comes to the next one and to the next one. And it would lead me down all of these paths, which eventually led to certain conversations that we had about like, you know, like what is our favorite Jewish holiday? And that's kind of like, you know, what really connected us to this piece. And that's pretty much what we explore in this show is my favorite Jewish holiday.
Can you tell me what it is?
Yeah. So I mentioned that Purim was like one of my favorite Jewish holidays, and I kind of explained it as like this, it's like a really feminist story of a woman who takes charge and saves her people. And like that is something that I've always found really inspiring. It was something that I like really held on to from my childhood. It's a very festive time. It's a time of celebration. There's dressing up, there's costumes and parades, and it's just inherently queer. Like it's pretty gay, you know, like dressing up.
It is really gay.
It's just really gay. And then, you know, as a teenager, I found out that that they encourage drinking as a part of this holiday. And I was like, this is the holiday for me, you know, as an 18-year-old who's party focused. But after that, I was like, oh man, like to see like how much joy and celebration there was in this holiday when, you know, there is so much sadness and so much like there's like it just always feels kind of heavy. And as I was telling Ari throughout this process, it was really hard for me to access like a Jewish joy is the best way I could describe it to him, because you know a lot of it is mourning. You know, we have to mourn our people like so often, and that was something that, you know, is also super prevalent in the queer community, is like this just sheer amount of loss that we've experienced. And so those were things that I was kind of connecting all these pieces of like these ideas of longing for a safe space, longing for a safe world, which is like something that both Jews and queer people like strive really hard for, and you know, having a place to feel safe and finding all of those like little pieces of that, and then having this idea of longing, and that's something like really prevalent in queer studies, which I'd been reading a lot about through the University of Winnipeg. Through like all of my women and gender studies classes I was taking, was this idea of like queer longing and what that looked like, especially in art. And then I stumbled upon this poem called Longing for Zion, and I just thought like there's that longing again, you know, there's that like longing for a safe place, longing for a safe world. So it just everything that we would talk about just brought me to like another piece that really, it felt that it really like connected to those identities for me, and I was able to really find a through line once we would chat about things. It was really cool.
It's amazing how that maybe without intention just sort of shows up in work. And Ari, were the two of you connected before this project?
We were connected through the Village Conservatory program. Oh, who would have thought?
What?
I know. When the Vic brought in Ari to do a 3-day, I can't remember how long it was.
3 days, maybe?
2 days of workshopping with Ari, of him just talking to us about like different styles of theater and him talking about cabaret. I found that so inspiring. I was like, oh my goodness, like here is this queer Jewish person right here in the city. I don't know why I never thought to connect with Ari. And then I'm grateful to the Vic for that, because like I wouldn't have met Ari without you guys. So
It's funny because I always thought that I came off as a batshit cuckoo person in those sessions. And so it's nice to know that somebody went, there's value.
So, Ari, did you make any discoveries about yourself and about Noah through this process, through your discussions and your creation together?
I've had the last 7 years of my life have been spent thinking almost daily about what it means to be a Jewish person, and coupled with a lifetime of thinking about what it means to be a queer person. And my time at Winnipeg Jewish Theatre really brought a lot of clarity to me as an individual and as a queer Jewish individual at that, and about how I see the world and the lens through which I sort of filter everything. But I learned lots about Noah and in the process, because I didn't really know Noah very much at all. I now can say I think she is pretty awesome and a very special person.
Wow.
And so incredibly smart and so wise. And so that's, in these situations, and I say this because also for those of you who are listening, here's a little plot twist. Not only did I mentor Noah in this process, but Jillian Willems did a mentorship with me through Creative Manitoba.
Yeah,
Stop!
we did.
Everything that's happening right now, I take no responsibility for in any way.
But we're both grateful.
But saying that, though, like having done a lot of mentorship, and it's funny because you talked about, sort of pairing emerging artists with established artists. And I always think that those terms are sort of weird, because like even when you said, I was like, I'm an established artist. Nobody ever really feels like that unless you're like Audra McDonald, but even then she probably doesn't. And I know that my other beacon of light and all things like this, Patty LuPone, probably is like, I am not an established artist. She's like, I am learning, I renounce equity. Yes. And so it's always new. And so stuff that Noah and I did in this, it was just interesting because I didn't have I didn't have a roadmap. A lot of it was just listening to Noah, hearing what she had to say, hearing what her curiosities were, and kind of just serving them back up to her through a little bit more life experience and going, okay, you said this, so what do you mean by that? Or what is this? You're telling me that you don't know, you can't identify role models. Well, think about it, like actually think and go off and tell me, who are your queer role models? Who are your Jewish role models? Who are your queer Jewish models? It was lots of like Venn diagramming between like queer and Jewish, and then the overlap between them for things, again, like she said, for the rituals. What are your queer rituals? What are your Jewish rituals? And then what are the queer Jewish rituals? And then I would leave each session with her just further reflecting on my own path. So what I loved though too was the one big discovery for me in all this was just really realizing that the story of Purim, and doing this with Noah, and the story of Esther, being the queen and having to go to her king because she finds out that Haman is planning to kill all the Jews. He wants to kill all the Jews, and the king doesn't know that Esther is Jewish. So it was sort of the big discovery for me that I never really clocked before, is that Purim is a coming out story. She has to out herself as a Jew and say to Achashverosh, the king. That's always a fun thing to say. I'll say it again.
I'm going to say it a lot in my show.
The king, that she, a Jewish person, is really interesting. And just, it was sort of a thing in terms of Jewish coming out that I hadn't really thought of before. So that was a really great discovery throughout this process alongside Noah.
And Noah, what about you? What discoveries did you make about yourself and in turn about Ari through this?
The nice thing is that Ari and I both grew up in Ontario. So it was really nice to be able to kind of connect in that way where we both had this kind of outsiders coming into Winnipeg a little bit, even though I had lots of connections here before, but even still, it was nice to kind of, to think of it that way. I hadn't really thought of it as both of us having come here to Winnipeg from Ontario and then figuring out what's next for both of us after, I don't know if I want to leave Winnipeg. I quite like it here. But even still, you know, just like thinking about those kind of things. And then just, you know, I got to learn so much about Ari, like outside of knowing him as like the WJT artistic director, you know, and because that's what I knew him as before. But, you know, we talked a lot about his training and what he did before. And we talked a lot about like determination and stuff like that. And it was really helpful for me, like to think of it that way, to really like have a drive. Like I think that's something I really envy about Ari, is that he has such a really passionate drive that pushes him forward. And I struggle with being driven, because I do really like to be a busy person, but that also means that I get fairly overwhelmed with things. So then with, you know, being neurodiverse, it's really hard to like figure out, you know, where is like the path that's driving you forward when everything is going on. So just like being like kind of like having that connection to like remind myself, like, you know, who I could be if I, you know, put in the drive and the effort a little bit more. I think it was like nice to be kind of like be reminded of that, and then like to talk about like, you know, like what Ari has been able to accomplish. And we talked a lot about like those kind of things, and I said, okay, well, if that's like, if I want those experiences, like I want to kind of take that from him a little bit, you know, and take that drive that he had been like talking to me about. And that's, I guess, more on professionalism than about this project in particular. But then I guess discoveries about myself, like just tapping into this was even more emotional than I thought it was going to be. You know, I think like with everything going on right now in the world, specifically in regards to Judaism and being Jewish and also being queer, you know, like the Club Q shooting happened while we were having our mentorship, and it's something we had to talk about. And then like with all of like the anti-Semitism coming out of like the United States, it was also something that we had to talk about, you know, and having Ari there to kind of, you know, to talk about that and to talk about those complicated feelings that I was having about, you know, feeling uncomfortable, like having to come out as both of these things. It feels like now it feels like a kind of dangerous thing to like be so vocal about both these things, because you really don't know what's going to happen. I didn't realize, I knew that it was going to be emotional. I knew that I was going to change, and it was something that I was hoping for. I just didn't realize how emotional it was going to be. I've spent a lot of time crying in a good way. It's good to get out the emotions, but it's been like, it's been really emotional. It's been a hard labor, but having like this story to go back to, and knowing that like I get to share this story and to share my perspective, to me is like the thing that I'm holding on to in the end of the day, is saying like, despite all of that, I'm still going to go out. I'm still going to share my story, because like this is what needs to be done.
Absolutely. And so you said you called it a show. It is turning into, or has become, a piece? Yeah, it explores my experience with the Purim story and what kind of drew me into this like love of the holiday. And I also talk about like what the holiday is, and like what it means, and like some of the ways that we celebrate it. And then Ari and I were talking about like, you know, if Esther were to talk to me, if she were to come to give me advice, you know, what would she say? Like, what advice would she have for me? And so I kind of got to put myself in her shoes a little bit, and, you know, give myself some advice from someone who has had to come out in such a dark time, and when like you're truly feeling threatened and your livelihood is being threatened, and to face certain death and in a certain way, and then like what I'd get to say back to her, you know, and like what would I say to her in response to her advice. And we talked a lot about, you know, it's an interesting thing of Purim, this idea that you want to share this story. And Esther, she gets it written down. She says like, tell people of what I did, tell people of how I saved our people. And she tells people to tell her story. And so Ari and I were kind of
thinking of like, oh, you know what? I think I need to incorporate some people to come in and to listen to my story and to kind of help make me into this queen, and then like take it all off and be back into myself a little bit. So yeah, and then we explored this this poem I found, that the longing for Zion. We take a section of that, and then Ari says, I want you to write a response. Like, how would you respond to this poem? And then I got to write my response to it, and that's kind of how it'll end off a little bit. So it'll be a short piece, but I think it'll be really interesting being able to explore this in that kind of way.
That's amazing. So on that note, how do you both, and I'll ask Noah first and then I'll go to you, Ari, how do you envision yourself moving forward, both together and separately, after this process?
I mean, I cannot wait to film it. Honestly, I'm so excited. And just like being able to explore that, and even to just have that as like even a jumping off point is something that excites me. You know, I think that this is something I would love to explore further, you know, and make a bit larger. Who knows? Maybe in the future it could be a fringe show. Ooh. You know, you never know.
Yeah.
But I think it's like really important for me to have some. I love having like a base project, you know, something that is short but sweet, and then being like, okay, then I can think about like, how would I like to expand this? You know, where am I going to take this further? Is this something else I want to explore, or is this a really great shooting off point to something else, you know, and being able to explore that. And then I am currently planning to hopefully visit Stratford in the summer is my goal. Yeah. So I'd really like to be able to do that because, they're doing Rent, and I need to see it.
And I think that's the thing in terms of next steps, is that like I can't wait to have Noah out here when she comes, and to take her out and show her around and get her tickets to see skits here. And I think that's the thing, is I've been very lucky to have mentored many people in my time, and I've been very privileged to have benefited from some really incredible mentors, Stephen Shipper being one of them, and also Bridget Wilson, who is married to Anthony Cimolino, who's the artistic director here at the Stratford Festival. She was my company mentor when I was in the festival company 12 years ago doing Peter Pan. And I've always sort of said that a lot of the mentorship work that I do is sort of paying it forward as thanks to the incredible mentors that I have had throughout my time and continue to have. So, you know, all of you, like both of you now, are like, you're my little chiclets.
Yay!
You're my babies.
We did it.
The door is always open to reach out, and, you know, whenever there's a thing. And you know, Jill, because whenever you do something and I see it on Instagram, I'll send you a text.
You do.
Be like, you're awesome. And so it's just to know that there is a connection now, that there's a line to reach out to if there's ever something you need. And then I get to become a cheerleader and a champion, which, you know, brings me great pride and joy.
I count myself very lucky to have had that experience with you, Ari. And I don't want to speak for Noah, but I get the impression that you feel the same way.
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, like, I just think that Ari is such a great resource. You know, I was straight up with him the other week. I said, Ari, I need audition help. Like, I need help with my audition. I like, will you help me? And Ari was like, of course. Like, let's schedule in time, you know? And being able to have that is like so important, like, especially within this process, you know, like being able to just be like, hey, like, listen to me sing, like, give me some notes, you know, and like just be able to kind of like get that on your feet, and with someone that you know who has, you know, is a director, has been in your shoes, you know. It's a little bit different when you're coming to your peers, because it's like it's a little bit of a competition sometimes, you know. And of course, I'm very lucky that all of my friends are very supportive. But
what are you saying? No, I'm just kidding.
But I just think that it's nice to have that person who really like gets where you're from, and like knows, you know, and knows who you are, and, you know, can kind of bring those pieces out. Like, I know that Ari can see like things that my friends might not be able to see in a certain way, because he has sort of an outside perspective on who I am. So yeah, so having that was just like so helpful.
That's so wonderful. Okay, so we are coming to the last couple minutes of our time together, but is there anything you want to talk about? Any last thoughts about the project that you'd like to share?
I'm just grateful again to all the fine folks at the Vic for doing this. I think this is such an awesome thing. I would say to anybody who is listening to this, if you've been the beneficiary of mentorship, like, keep paying it forward. I think it's so important, especially in this business where it can feel sometimes like a competition. It's really important to have people that you know are in your corner and are rooting for you, and that you can go to for perspective, and who know you as an individual and as an artist and as a creator. I think it's everything. It's really so special. And so I really applaud the Vic for doing this. And I really am grateful to Noah for her hard work and dedication and her passion throughout this process. It was really something special. And, we're going to continue to have conversations over the next couple of weeks about how the work can deepen, and do a little bit of dramaturgy on it, and just make sure that it's everything that she wants it to be for when it's ready to be seen by other people.
That's so wonderful. Thank you.
It's been so wonderful being able to work with Ari, who I know like is so supportive of like what we're trying to do and like the goal of what I wanted to complete. And I think like he really gave me a chance to explore myself in like such a safe way where I didn't feel like there were any sharp edges, like I didn't feel dangerous to talk to Ari, like I didn't feel like whenever we worked together, I didn't feel like I was hitting a sore spot, it felt very natural to talk and to explore the way that we did. And like this show is just so cool. I think that, it's a really feminist show, and I think that's really important to me. And it's a super queer show and a super Jewish show. Yay. And like those are things that I've never really, like I haven't ever gotten to do anything like that before. And I think that it's just so special that like the Vic gets to encourage, young artists to really explore their identity. And I think that like that is something that after listening to other people's episodes, they're really looking for the same thing that I am, which is a person to share their experiences with, a person who knows like what they've been through, a person who is a guide, who has lived in their shoes. And, and Ari has done things that I would love to be able to do. So just being able to see him, being out there, it gives me so much hope for myself, and I never really had the chance to think about, I'd felt pretty weighed down by some of like the arts a little bit, because I don't often get to see people who are like myself on stage. A queer Jewish story, it's not always something you're going to get to explore the same way on stage, and especially by yourself. I mean, right. How many people get to say that they get to do a show that is truly like themselves, and that's something I'm really looking forward to. And just I feel so grateful to the Vic. I felt so supported by everyone who works here, and you, Jill, and Daphne, and Paul and Simon. You've all done such a wonderful job at, making me feel comfortable in this city. And I don't know what I would do without you guys. Like, genuinely, oh my God, I'm gonna cry. But like, yeah, it's true.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's amazing to hear, and we had the most fun getting to know you when you were with us. And we're so excited to see what the future holds and to work together in whatever way the universe will present to us. So, and I'm just glad it got to be this today.
Same.
Thank you both so very much. Is there anything you want to plug? Is there anything coming up for either of you that you'd like to share with our listeners? Noah?
Yeah, I'll go first. I recently started a queer arts collective with some wonderful friends of mine from the University of Winnipeg. We're called the Yours Queerly Arts Collective, and we'll be specializing in queer art for Winnipeggers. I'm very excited.
Where can our listeners find information about your amazing collective?
Yeah, so we have a website. It's www.yoursqueerlyarts.com. You can check us all out and all of our members. We have a Facebook page, we have an Instagram, we have a TikTok. So yeah, you're welcome to give us a follow. We'd love to chat with you. If you're a queer artist, please reach out to us. We'd love to know how to service you. Whatever that means.
I love it. Thank you. Ari, what about you?
There's a show called Narrow Bridge happening at the Winnipeg Jewish Theatre in early 2023 that deals with a lot of the topics that Noah and I have been exploring about queer Jewish identity. And so I hope you go and see that. And then the next show in the season is a play called Summer of Semitism, which deals with young people grappling with the effects of anti-Semitism. I may not be there anymore, but it's the season I programmed, and
Yes.
so you should go check it out and support and meet Dan, who's the new AD, because he's really awesome. So I, as always, support the Winnipeg Jewish Theatre, and come see skits at Stratford.
Yes.
And if you're a Winnipegger, like, hit me up when you're here and say hi, and know that there will always be a friendly face to greet you at Stratford and in the Stratford Festival auditions.
So lovely.
Thank you both so much. It was wonderful to chat with you, to hear about this experience and what you've got going on. And I look forward to a day where we can all be in the same space together again.
Let's go to Stratford.
Let's go to Stratford.
Stratford 2023.
Thank you. Did we do it, Daph?
Yes, we absolutely did. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. This is actually our final episode of Season 1. A huge thank you to our producing partner, the Crescent Arts Centre. An even bigger thank you to our wonderful, wonderful funder, the Canada Council for the Arts. We're very optimistic that we'll get to do a Season 2, but of course these things are all dependent on grant funding. So if you like what you heard, if you want to get involved, if you just want to drop us a line and learn how you can get involved in a podcast or what we've got going on, you can follow us on social media at Village Conservatory, or you can also check us out on our website at villageconservatory.com. Thank you so much for listening, and hopefully we'll see you back here very soon.